Hello, we have today Ian, the CEO of Etihad Payments, to talk about some interesting topics within the UAE payment infrastructure. We're going to talk about Aani and Jaywan and some of the groundbreaking projects that they are doing in this part of the world. Ian, thanks for taking time to talk to the integrator.
Thank you for having me.
Ian, it's a pleasure to meet you at Etihad's Payments office. Take us through, the entire journey of Etihad and its mission and all what you're doing in this entire for the nation.
So listen, we are the organization which makes your money move, and we do it tirelessly 24/7, so you don't have to worry about it. People don't wake up in the morning to think about payments, but when you take a second and think about every time you need to withdraw money from an ATM, or you need to pay for your groceries, or you get your salary paid, or you send some money to friends or family, there is actually an incredibly complex infrastructure behind it, which makes the money move. And us as a national payments company, that's what we do. We operate the infrastructure, and it's not only the technology, it's also quite important set of rules, how the different players in the ecosystem behave. So, people don't want to think about payments. You don't want to worry, how to pay. You should only worry how much you have to pay for goods or services. Similarly, nations in the past, they were not too concerned about national payment systems. But recently, I think countries realized that having a friction-free, well-functioning national payments infrastructure is actually very important for the competitiveness of the country. So that's why you see many countries establishing national payments companies like Etihad Payments. UAE did it in 2023, and since then we have been, shaking the payments infrastructure here. It was serving well before, but we feel to get it ready for the digital future and the vision UAE has for the digital economy, we need to come up with some even better solution for people and businesses in the UAE.
Yeah, and if I say Etihad Payments is the company of the future, what would you say to that?
Well, I think we are a company of the past, present, and the future, because we are a company which is not a traditional company in a sense. Our objective is not to maximize revenue or maximize profit. We are here to actually serve public policy objectives and do the right thing for the country. And it's also something which attracts different kind of people working here, right? Because we are driven by this noble purpose that we do something which sometimes you do only once in your career, right? Changing a payment system of a country, something you can tell your grandparents or even your grandchildren when you are older that you were part of it. And we do it because we want to improve people's lives. We want to make kind of your day-to-day life much easier. So you feel financially included and you can take advantage of the digital economy. So I think we are going to be here as long as economy exists and wants to thrive.
Simply put, you're going to change people's habits now.
That's what we have been trying. People are creature of habits, so we can talk a little bit about it. When you come up with a new idea, sometimes the market, puts a mirror in front of you. Oh, you want us to do this? Well, we need to change our habits, and sometimes it takes time for people to do that.
Yeah, tell me about your journey as a CEO. Where were you before, and how do you come into all the picture of the financial ecosystem of this country?
So we established Etihad Payments 2 years ago, and I actually moved to the UAE for this purpose. And the purpose for the company is relatively simple. We want to build a payments ecosystem of the UAE, which is one of the best in the world, most modern, and also most inclusive. Because payments and national infrastructure is really about reaching everyone in the economy and making sure that they can benefit. So I believe if we do it right, we can really change people's lives, as I mentioned. Before, I worked in different jurisdictions. I was in Africa. And when we talk about financial inclusion, that's a game changer. On a continent like Africa, when people get access to financial services, they build their credit history, they get access to loans, that's changing their lives. So that's something I was honored to be part of. But before, I worked in Canada, so I have some experience from North America and also in Europe. But last 2 years, it has been an incredible journey. I am super proud of what we have built at Etihad Payments, and probably the most proud of is the team. because we were kind of a startup which had to start everything from scratch. So we were fortunate enough to build the company, build the culture, and bring the people who are driven by the same purpose, right? Serving the country, doing something, enabling people around us to be successful, which takes a special breed of people, I think. So that's what I'm quite proud of.
Special breed of people. I know you have coming up with some special, innovations, I would say. Let's talk about one of your innovations that you've launched in 2023, Aani. What's it doing in the market? What's it doing to the entire financial ecosystem, and what's its outreach like? Please give some number of numbers. What's it going with the banks and the non-banking institution?
So Aani in Arabic means instant. And basically, that's what it is. It's an instant payment platform. So I mentioned we don't want for people to worry, how to pay. I don't want you to worry that when you need to pay someone and you have an obligation, sometimes it may take a day or two for the money to get there. That's not what in 2025 we didn't want it even in 2023 when we launched Aani. So Aani in essence is an instant payment solution. So it ensures that you can move money between two stores of value within few seconds. So it's fast. It should be also convenient. In the past, you always had to exchange these long sequences of numbers called IBANs, and if you made a typo, you have to rewrite it all. That's not very convenient. We know each other. We know something about each other. I know your cell phone number. I know your email address. Government knows your Emirates ID. Why can't I send money to you just by using something I already know about you or I already have in my mobile phone? So kind of the convenience and being able to send money more easily. The other one is security. Of course, when it comes to touching money, we need to make sure that this happens, in a very secure way. And last is inclusivity. And that's probably one thing which makes Aani quite unique, because we are not the first country that is launching an instant payment solution. You have seen over the last, let's say, 10 years, quite a few national instant payments infrastructures were being built up. But I think the one we have built for the UAE is learning from some of the experience the other countries have had. And one thing which makes Aani quite different is how rich it is when it comes to features and functionality, but also how inclusive it is. So, in the UAE, we have a very diverse population. Many people have a bank account. Some other people, they don't have a bank account. They are relying on salary cards, prepaid cards, or wallet providers. And Aani, what the revolution it brought to the payments ecosystem is that it doesn't matter if you are dealing with a bank or if you are dealing with a wallet provider or an exchange house, you can connect to Aani. So Aani, includes everyone, and the inclusiveness of Aani, I think it's what makes it stand out and be quite different.
So, Ian, tell me about some challenges. You have been working with banks, you've been working with non-banking institutions, you had to scale it up. How do you bring it, to the market? How is the final end consumer going to, know about Aani? Maybe, get these banks to tell them that this is out there. What's the plan like to reach the larger society?
Absolutely. So payments are a network game, right? There are multiple players you have to collaborate with and work with. Us as Etihad Payments, we don't offer anything directly to the end users, to businesses or consumers. So we need to work with the financial institutions, licensed financial institutions, to bring the new features and functionality to the market. And you have to kind of cover both sides of a payment equation. One is the acceptance. So, when you need to pay someone, do they accept the new form of payment? And then you also have to be able to initiate the payment from your side. So that's something which was probably the hardest to onboard. We are currently up to close to 60 financial institutions. Many of them are traditional banks, but we also have some of the non-traditional financial or banking institutions like exchange houses. I mentioned some of the wallet providers like PayBuy, using channels like Botim. So onboarding everyone, making sure that the platform remains safe and secure, you have to run everyone through a very rigid testing and certification process. So it took us a year to get everyone on board. I mentioned that Aani is also very feature rich. So it's not only about me being able to send money to you using your cell phone number. We had to support also the more traditional way of sending it through an IBAN. So I can still do that. But there is an ecosystem of QR codes. So we also wanted to make sure that some of the merchants or businesses who currently may not even accept digital payments, they have an easy and very convenient way of accepting Aani payment and moving into the digital world just by printing a QR code and putting it, as a sticker on the side of their shop. So there are multiple ways how the Aani features and functionality have to go to the market. You can request money from someone. If I owe you money for dinner for last night, you can just send me a request to pay. We can split bill. If we go for the dinner and you don't want to send me a request next day, we can split the bill on the spot. So there was a very rich set of functionality which we had to bring to the market, which required, as I mentioned, a lot of testing. And last but not least, payments are about trust. So then it was convincing the consumers that this is something new, something they should take advantage of, and something they should trust because it was built by someone who is heavily regulated by the central bank. We are also owned by the central bank. So we launched a big marketing campaign, kind of creating awareness so people can sign up and they can start taking advantage of Aani and all these features and functionalities which I have described.
And it's fantastic to hear all the entire challenges that you faced, the entire story, how you have worked with these banks. Last time when I spoke to Andrew, he said, you're gonna take cash out of the system. I mean, less cash. The entire purpose of Aani is to reduce cash in the nation's economy, right? So tell us a bit more, how are you planning to stretch this? How are the banks going to the end consumer? Do you see that happening with banks? They are all reaching out. How much of banks are doing this process?
Correct.
Of taking out of the cash?
Correct. By the way, I like cash. I like the notes. They are beautiful. So I don't have anything against cash, but I think people should have a choice. Right? So people who are comfortable with cash, they will continue transacting in cash. But unfortunately, I think when it comes to financial inclusion, what we don't want to see is that people don't have any other choice but to transact in cash. We want to really offer an alternative which enables everyone to make the right choice. Am I gonna, use cash or am I gonna use a digital channel? So that's what Aani is about. You mentioned, the convincing of people. So we are just over a year since the initial launch of Aani. I think 1.5 million people have signed up. So, you can reach them by using, as I mentioned, their cell phone number or email address or the government Emirates ID, which is quite significant number of amount of population of the UAE. So that's definitely successful. We have close to 100,000 merchants already enabled to accept Aani. So chances are, if you go to a traditional retailer or traditional merchant and you ask about Aani, there may be a way, either today or in a very near future, to pay with a QR code and using Aani. So that all translated also in a very significant growth of transactions going through the system. So we see probably 20 or sometimes 30% growth month over month, which is significant, right? We are, of course, starting from a relatively small numbers, but even where we are now, some days it's around 400,000 transactions which get processed through the platform, through Aani, every day. You mentioned that humans are creatures of habit. Surprisingly, probably 98% of those transactions are still using the traditional IBAN. Even though there is this option to use a more convenient way because we have all our, beneficiaries registered in the banking apps, we usually use IBAN. But it's good to see that the 1 or 2% where we are when people send money using the cell phone number, it continues growing. And where the role of the financial institutions or banks is, Aani is different, that it's not an app. It's not something, you necessarily need to go somewhere and kind of look for Aani. Aani is a payment scheme. So what we are trying to achieve is that you don't have to look for Aani. Aani finds you. When you want to just go with your life and make purchases, you should find Aani. So most of the banks, I mentioned, there are 55 participants, so pretty much all all major financial institutions are on Aani. And when you open their existing channels, their existing banking app or other channel, you will see Aani there. So it's not that you have to download a new app. You can. We have our own app, if for whatever reason you don't want to use the banking app, but Aani will be there wherever you need it. And that's something what we had to create. So we built the campaign not only ourselves, but we worked with all our partners. So you may have seen notifications and emails coming from different banks. Hey, there is Aani, sign up because it's convenient, it's fast, it's inclusive, and you should take advantage of it. So it's really, we are working on this initiative together with the full ecosystem. And I am feeling a lot of support, which is amazing.
You're getting a lot of support. You talk about the app, right? Tell me about the Aani app. What does it do? You have it through banks. Why do you need an app?
So that's a very good question, because many countries have implemented both models. Either you completely rely on the financial institutions to offer the channels, or you kind of build your own channel as well. We decided to opt to have our own Aani app, and there were effectively two reasons. One is while Aani can be found in all the major banking and financial institutions channels, if you have multiple bank accounts, for example, then you have to go to one bank and an exchange house or a wallet provider and kind of deal with the money you have in that ecosystem. Aani app allows you to connect to all your stores of value. So basically, when I use the Aani app, I have one bank account, I have one wallet, and I have actually a prepaid travel card connected to it as well. So that's kind of showing the inclusivity that now you can, from one channel, from one app, you can now move and transact from all your stores of value. You can move money between wallet and a bank account and stuff like that. So that was one reason. The second reason was also to offer all the features and functionality. So on our Aani app, you find split bill. You can scan a QR code to pay at a merchant. So all the features and functionalities are there. And last but not least, I mentioned that one of the building blocks of Aani was the inclusivity and making sure that even smaller financial institutions and non-traditional financial institutions, they get access to Aani and they can take advantage. Their customers can take advantage of Aani. Some of these players today, they may not even have an app, right? So expecting them to build an app, that would take probably a lot of time, a lot of effort. So we offer them Aani as kind of the first digital channel for their customers. So they don't have their own app, but they can instruct their customers that they can use Aani for their Aani app for their day-to-day transactional banking and payments and stuff like that. So those are some of the reasons why we have an app. But when you look at the statistics today, I think only 30% of Aani transactions are actually initiated through the Aani app. 2/3 would be coming through the traditional channels of the financial institutions.
And let me ask you this, the banks, how you might be able to give me a sketch of what challenges did they face when they had to incorporate Aani into their back-end process?
Well, you would have to ask them, but generally, when it comes to safeguarding people's money, that's what banks have to take very seriously. You give your hard-earned salary to them, and you want to make sure that it's protected. In today's DNA, unfortunately, financial scams, fraud, that's becoming a real problem. So every time you speed up transactions, the players in the value chain have less time to think if that transaction is genuine or if it's potentially a fraudulent transaction. So as we are now forcing the financial institution to make a decision on a payment within 10 seconds, right? Aani cannot take more than 10 seconds. The payment either goes or fails. It's irrevocable. Once the other party receives the money, they can use it, they can withdraw it, they can pay with it. The money is good funds. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges, giving much less time to the financial institutions to make a decision on a payment. And then kind of upgrading all their backend systems to deal with that challenge, right? Making sure that still the security, which was non-negotiable for us, is still maintained, and they can make the decisions if payment should be approved or if it should be declined and stuff like that. So it's a major overhaul of the backend processing for most of the banks.
When we talk about Aani, now let me ask you about the next one that you have in the pipeline. I would say Jaywan. So what's the status? What are you planning to roll out? Tell us about what difference will that make in the entire ecosystem.
So Jaywan is our domestic card scheme, right? So again, we are not the only country which has or will have a domestic card scheme. Some countries had it. Canada, I was in Canada. Interac in Canada has been around for, 40 years. So many countries have a domestic card scheme. We will have one. It's going to be called Jaywan, as you mentioned. It will start with debit cards and prepaid cards, like for the salary card use cases, but it will even expand. If there is a demand for credit cards, we will launch Jaywan credit card as well. Why a country does a domestic card scheme? There are usually two reasons. The international card schemes have done a really good job in creating a fantastic interoperability in the world, right? It works everywhere. Everywhere you go, you know exactly what's going to happen. Sometimes when you create this global network, it's not always tailored for the specific needs of a jurisdiction. So that's why many domestic card scheme and also our card scheme Jaywan is really something we are building inside UAE for UAE, for citizens in UAE, right? There will be set of benefits you will get when the Jaywan card is issued to you, and it will be tailored to, what do you need to do in UAE? Do you get a discount at that merchant, or do you get access to this parks or whatever? So we are building really something which is specific for UAE. If you do it that way, we also believe we can do it in a very efficient way. Right, so it's going to be something which should be cheaper for merchants to accept, and it should bring efficiency. And last but not least, it's also making sure that the processing happens inside the UAE. I mentioned we are tirelessly working 24/7, every day, making the payments go. Today we process close to 2 million card transactions. So we want to make sure that the domestic card scheme also benefits from this robust technology we have built domestically, and the transactions and everything stays here, and you can rely on it day in, day out.
It's a brilliant innovation in the pipeline, I must say. Yeah, tell me, what do you think Visa and MasterCard would be thinking about all these developments that you're going to bring in the market? How do you think they would be reacting to it?
Well, I know how they are reacting because, of course, we are in discussions with them. I have to say, this is not a surprise for any of the international card schemes. I mentioned before that there are many national domestic schemes around the world, and many countries are working on implementing some. So for me, it's not really a competition. It's not that they get upset or we get upset. We have to find a way how to kind of collaborate. So it's kind of competing and collaborating. They have done an amazing job in creating the global networks. They have brought innovation, which is removing a lot of friction, right? This idea of tapping your card or tapping your watch. That's amazing. So we are doing something similar on a domestic scale, but we will need to coexist for any of the international, transactions. If I issue a card and you cannot use it when you travel outside of the country, that's not gonna probably be a card you will want to keep. So there will always be a collaboration or competition, if you want to call it, something between competing and collaborating, because they cannot be without us and we cannot be without them. That's the lay of the land. So we are finding a way how to make it work for the benefit of the cardholder and the merchants.
Something I must say is finance is no more it's not in isolation. You have to work with multiple parties. Right now, gone was those eras where we used to work with single company or a organization that to get all the payments done. Now it's more of, you can have options to it. Let me ask you, when you tell me about the anticipated date that this would be live, if there is any.
You mean the
Jaywan? Yes.
So there are some pilot cards which have been already issued. So we also want to make sure when you launch a new scheme, it's a massive undertaking, right? You have to come up with the technology. You have to come up with the chip specification on the plastic. That has taken us over a year or close to 2 years of building. Then you need to convince the issuers that they will start issuing cards. But more importantly, before that happens, you need to make sure that you enable the acceptance. I talk about the two sides of payments equation. When people start getting Jaywan cards, what if they go to pay for their grocery and the card wouldn't be accepted, right? So what we have really focused on making sure is that you can withdraw money with Jaywan card, you can pay with Jaywan card, you can load Jaywan card onto your Google Pay, Samsung Pay, Apple Pay, kind of the things you are used to, which is taking a lot of effort, right? Paying online, that's another thing. When you want to pay online, you should be able to pay with a Jaywan card. Mm-hmm. So that's something which has taken us quite some time, and we rely on all the acquirers and other market players. We are almost there. So the expectation is that at the end of Q1 or in Q2 of this year, 2025, the issuers would start issuing Jaywan cards because the ecosystem will have been enabled. Even today, all ATMs accept Jaywan. All point of sale terminals you can do. Where the difficulties are some of the e-commerce transaction, the tokenization, loading cards to the wallet on your phone. Those are things which take a little bit longer. So, but definitely happening in 2025. You will get your Jaywan card.
True. Financial Integrator looks forward to catching you when you launch the Jaywan card. We'll sit down then. But let me ask you my final few questions. Before my last question, let me ask you on your leadership. Ian, you've been the CEO now. What is the style of leaders that you should be, financial institutions should be having? Maybe, I'm talking about, the new age leaders that is coming into the entire landscape of financial ecosystem. How differently they should do their job?
Oh, you're asking me to give them advice. Listen, when I was thinking about joining UAE, I was impressed with the ambition the country has, right? There is a massive vision the leadership of the country has, and now us as executives across different industries, we need to execute, right? And the ambition is something which kind of keeps me personally going. So I think the leadership style here is you need to be bold, you need to be able to take risks, and you need to deliver. My role is a little bit different, right? I'm not leading a financial institution. I don't have to compete with other financial institutions. Our style, on the other hand, has to be much more inclusive and collaborative. I kind of, servant leadership, it's called. So we are here to serve financial institutions. We listen, we gather them, we talk to them, we listen what kind of requirements they have, what they want us to do. And then you need to find kind of some coherent output that everyone can kind of agree with, and you can build your platform that is going to serve the different organizations with very different competing objectives. So I think general leaders who are driving the innovation, they have to be bold and have a big ambition and kind of align with the vision of the country, which is super exciting. I need to add kind of a little bit of a diplomacy and making sure that I can align the stars and make sure that we can all head towards the vision together, and we don't leave anyone behind, because that's what payments are about, making sure that you move together so you can go far.
I asked you this because you guys are the ones who are shaping the new financial culture, and there is a technological shift that's happening. And we see that, talents needs to be brought from a technological angle. No more is that old way of working in the traditional sphere of things. So this is a necessity to replace with new talents that has a technological side and understanding to the banking industry or the financial industry.
Absolutely. I think fresh way of thinking, is what every industry needs. You mentioned technology. I believe that today everybody is a technologist, right? Especially the new generation people who are graduating from university today. You are a doctor, but you are completely dependent on technology, right? So today, I think every single person has to have a technology background. And I think, deep specialties, of course, will be required in technology. But what's more valuable for me is a financial services background or financial services mindset with technology savviness. And that's what we are looking for. Of course, we are a UAE company. We also want to make sure that UAE nationals, we can build a lot of talent. We can build payments experience, because that's something which is quite niche. So we are also having our own programs, how we are teaching people about payments, how we are trying to, build talent which can carry the flag of payments forward. But technology is definitely a necessary component, but it's not the only one, right? When I opened, I mentioned, yes, we run technology, but what's probably even more important is the rules, how people behave, right? You can always build a beautiful road, which everybody can go as fast as possible. But if you don't put speed limits, if you don't explain that, there is a right of way from the right, it's gonna be a nightmare. So similarly for payments, the set of rules is extremely important. So you need lawyers, you need compliance people, you need kind of, it takes the entire village to actually make payments work, not just the technology.
Set of rules. That brings me to my last question, probably on, what is AAP stance on central bank's regulations regarding open finance and the move towards an open data society? What do you think of all the regulations that's coming into this entire financial landscape?
So I mentioned I have experience from Europe, and open payments and then open banking probably started all in Europe. I think it's a brilliant idea. I am super excited, and we are actually part of it because we kickstarted some of the open finance work here with the central bank. You need a solid regulation, right? Because when people talk about open APIs and open finance, it cannot be open to everyone. You need a regulated entities to be able to access. But what's really exciting about it is you are putting the consumer in the driver's seat, right? Financial information, financial data, it's your data, it's my data. I should be able to share it in a secure way with whoever I want to get the best possible deal. If I'm looking for a loan, if I'm looking for a mortgage, if I'm looking for an insurance, those are my data. I want to be in the driver's seat. I want to decide who can, get my data and get me the best deal. So from that perspective, I think that's again fitting with the ambition what we are trying to build in the UAE. Very efficient, very user-friendly economy where, you will be able to get the best possible deal because you are in the driver's seat as the consumer.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure talking to you, and I can see the excitement in you. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having me.